Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Frank McGuigan, who's President and Chief Operating Officer at Transplace. And today we're going to talk about a sustained market shakeup, what M&A activity means for the transportation and logistics industry. Now, over the past few years, there's been kind of the steady stream of mergers and acquisitions in the transportation and logistics industry. Everything from, high-profile, big, mega deals to small local transactions to everything in between. And, what does this mean exactly for, shippers and, other companies in the industry? What's driving all of this M&A activity, and will it continue in the months and years ahead? I mean, those are some of the questions we're going to talk about in today's episode. And it's certainly great to have Frank back in the program. Obviously, they're at Transplace. They've been involved in several of these acquisitions over the past few years. So it's great to get his perspective in terms of what's happening in the market and what could potentially happen in the market, moving forward. So, Frank, welcome back to the program.
Adrian, very nice to be back. Thank you for having me. And you're right, we've had 7 acquisitions in 7 years here at Transplace, and we've been very active in the market, and it has been a very active M&A market.
Great. So let's start with that first basic question. I mean, like I said, a lot of transactions have taken place over the past few years. I mean, what have been the main drivers of all this?
Oh, I mean, if you look at the way we look at it, and if you read anything in this space, including your blog and your newsletter, and that's a free plug for you, Adrian, by the way. Starting with the consumer and working your way backwards all the way up through the supply chain to support that consumer, the demand in the marketplace has significantly changed to a more demanding, ultimately, consumer, to a more demanding shipper who's placing those demands all the way back on their manufacturers and suppliers, all the way up through the supply chain. And what that means is their requirements to successfully serve that entire chain are changing. The need for increased velocity, the need for increased visibility, the need for increased SKU deployment in different places. All of those things mean more pressure on the supply chains of the manufacturers, the retailers, and the ultimate consumer. And so with that, it forces the manufacturers, it forces the retailers to invest in that side of the business. And what you have as a result are high growth areas in the marketplace, like transportation management and technology, like new brokerage startups that are trying to bring the carrier community, especially the smaller carrier community, more closely engaged with the actual shipper and disintermediating and elevate the brokerage community. And also everything around some of the visibility and technology tools that are out there that are requiring almost like parcel-like visibility, even at the full truckload level. So all of those things culminate in a push into the marketplace for investment and growth. And if you look at the big picture, just the general statistics around transportation and logistics, outsourcing and third-party logistics, you see that it's a high-growth field. If you look at the Penn State Capgemini study around the positive aspects of and the value delivered by third-party logistics companies, and you look at what Gartner's suggesting as it relates to only 30 to 40% penetration in the transportation management technology field, and the belief that that'll grow by 24% a year for the next 5 years, all of those things make for a robust marketplace right now and a good opportunity to invest.
Now, are you seeing, I think there's a lot of factors there that you brought up, but, obviously I think e-commerce is one driving force, right? In terms of, the huge growth area, there, and in terms of, expanding the capabilities of both LSPs and shippers to be able to respond to that growth and those customer expectations. Are you seeing, one of the words I hear a lot from other folks is this need for scale, and maybe it's, scale being a competitive differentiator. Do you see that as well as kind of that being another driving force?
I do see that as a driving force, and so for us as an example, when we acquire a company, one of the benefits that we bring them, if they're a smaller transportation management is the benefit of our scale and our network. So scale is one thing, and network leverage is a separate thing. And so buying power, we believe that there's a point of diminishing returns in that, number one. Number two is it only gets you so far when capacity comes constrained in the marketplace. But scale of network, the ability to leverage your network to the benefit of the carrier community and the benefit of the community of shippers that play in that network, that's the differentiator. And so one of the things that we're really leveraging for our community of shippers, of which there's over 200 of them as transportation management customers, is that network scale, utilizing our more than 20,000 carriers to operate successfully, improve operating ratios inside our network, so that ultimately the carrier and the customer are getting the best deal.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about more and more over the past few years is this concept of, network effects in supply chain logistics, and I think that's coming to bear right now, more clearly in terms of leveraging the power of a network and a community, both on the shipper side and the carrier side, and bringing that community together. And I've always argued that logistics service providers, 3PLs, are in a perfect position to leverage or enable those network effects, because you effectively are bringing this ecosystem together.
I think that's right. I believe that those networks have existed, but for the first time, we're actually seeing that benefit being delivered back to the carrier and the shipping community. And so if you look at high scale trucking companies or high scale brokerage companies, et cetera, they leverage their network successfully. What we're trying to do is marry those two things together to the benefit of all parties.
Great. Now, so, I mean, a lot of these acquisitions are not just being done by kind of the companies within the industry, but there's a lot of, private equity companies that are also kind of getting involved here. I mean, what makes transportation and logistics, so attractive to investment firms?
Everything that I just described as it relates to industry growth. Think about what's possible right now in commercial, as an example, commercial real estate, and warehousing, and what's happened in because of the need for on-demand inventory pre-positioned near the demand point, and everything that's happening in that network. Think about again, the statistics around the growth in software as a service and transportation management systems. All of those things are exciting to private equity companies. Private equity companies are there to support growth in business, but more importantly, support the investment dollars of their shareholders. And this is an industry with the amount of disruption that's occurring, with the amount of growth that's growing. It is a very good bet. You layer on top of that the benefit of very positive capital markets right now, supporting all that underlying investment, and it's a very good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of money flowing into this industry. I know over the past couple of years, I've gotten a lot of inquiries from private equity firms and VCs trying to get a better handle on the market, or understand, or getting my thoughts and perspectives on certain either companies or segments. So I think that's something that I've been personally, experiencing over the past few months and years here. Shifting gears a little bit, and I'm sure the answer, varies by the acquiring company, but what makes a good, acquisition target? I mean, what are the main, attributes that acquiring companies look for in, here in the logistics industry?
Well, if you look at our core business, it really North American logistics management for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. And so when we, if you look at our individual 7 acquisitions, all of them had us expanding a capability, a geography, or a product that we traditionally didn't bring to the marketplace or bring to our current customers. So as an example, SCO Logistics, which is where I came from, allowed Transplace to expand into the chemical vertical. The 3 transportation management deals that we did after that one was to expand further into Canada, and the other 2 were really to expand our presence in the middle market. And what did that do for Transplace? Traditionally, we were very much an enterprise 500 or a Fortune 500 focused organization. And now that allowed us to have an entry point into what we consider to be the middle market and bring technology into play to better service that middle market. So for us, that expansion of current capability, expansion of market, you look at what we did with the Laser acquisition that we made in the end of 2016. We had been in Mexico for 8 years, very successfully growing that business. But Laser really gave us a tremendous cross-border capability there for all of our customers, and increased our warehousing footprint, and it increased our customs clearance volume for our customers that are throughout the rest of North America. So all of those things have to link together. We really, we look at multiple acquisitions a year. We're very choosy. They have to have real revenue synergy. We don't buy companies looking for cost synergy. In fact, what makes our acquisitions as successful as they have been is the fact that we like to keep most of the teams that we acquire, because they bring new ideas and innovation into the business that we haven't considered. In addition to that human capacity that we're acquiring supports the tremendous amount of organic growth that we've seen over the years as well. So it's been very beneficial all the way around.
Yeah, no, those are some great points. I mean, obviously, I think you look at different deals that are out there, and sometimes, companies bought and they might have been in kind of financial, distress. In other cases, they're bought because that company is fast growing and is going to be, contribute financially positively, relatively quickly to the company. Your thoughts on, the importance of culture?
Yeah, I was just going to add that point actually, and number one is we haven't bought a company in financial distress. We bought profitable, growing companies because it's important that for us, as we assess a business, we don't want to do a fire sale. We don't want to buy a company in distress. It's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is add value to their customer base and add value to our customer base in the marketplace in general by expanding capability. So they have to be able to stand on their own, or they wouldn't be interested. That's number one. Number two, you brought up an incredibly important point. There are deals that we say no to and have said no to because there wasn't a terrific cultural fit. Transplace is customer first, people always culture, right? And so they have to be built with people, with customer in mind on every decision that's made on a daily basis. And if that's not the culture of the business, and we've seen companies that were like that, then it's not a good fit. And we're going to spend too much time trying to indoctrinate them into our culture. And ultimately, that's not good for anyone involved. So we save everybody the trouble and focus on great cultural fits. And we have been really, truly blessed with the acquisitions that we've made. They have fit seamlessly into our company from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that's a key point there, because I think a lot of the successes that I've seen over the years have been because there was a great alignment in culture between the two companies that came together. And on the flip side, those that, whether it was on the LSP front or even on the technology front, those that kind of failed or kind of were problematic were those where both companies had very different cultures. And like you said, a lot of time and energy was spent, trying to address those cultural differences, and then that prevented the unified company to move forward, effectively. So I think culture plays a big role here.
It does. It's funny. I was recently at a large company that's going through a significant merger/acquisition, global in size, and they were talking about how there is a culture of the company that's buying them, and then they have their culture. And there's a team actually working on a third culture that's going to be the combination of the two cultures in addition to something that's new and different. And I think that we have not had to have that third culture conversation yet. And you're right. It is. We're immediately focused on, candidly, supporting the people that we've just acquired and everything and every concern that an acquiring company might have. as well as supporting their customer base and bringing to them ultimately the benefit that you would get by being a TransPlace customer.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've heard of cases like that as well. I mean, I think it's one thing to kind of define a culture on PowerPoint and on a document,
Exactly.
but in reality, a culture is something that obviously develops over time, and it's something that has to be reinforced over and over again, and does take some time. There's no shortcuts around developing the type of culture that you want to develop within your company.
You have to live your culture, Adrian. It starts from the top down. And if you're not living it and reinforcing it and supporting it and feeding it, and nourishing it every single day, then it's not going to be the culture that you want. You really have to live those values.
Another important point, or something that's become even more important. I'm just kind of your take on this in terms of how important is it, or whether it's something that's more manageable than the cultural side of things. Is technology. I mean, when you look at a company that you're acquiring, what is the role, or how important is the technology that they bring to the table? Perhaps the technology that they might not have.
Sure, it's very important, and so we have, and we were just laughing about this the other day. We've acquired 4 other TMSs, and so we want everybody on the TransPlace platform. We think that's the best way to deliver value across the community of shippers. And so what we've done is we've migrated every single customer onto the TransPlace platform, but we've migrated them with the bells and whistles that they were currently using in the host system, and making sure that no customer felt that they weren't getting everything they had before, plus. Ultimately, we haven't acquired a company with a technology that was better than ours. We have a very strong technology platform, as you're quite aware. But there are some things that we've learned along the way for sure, with some terrific, as I would say, bells and whistles that we have actually promoted in our own technology to support the acquired customer base and the entire community. So that's been very positive.
Yeah, no, I think certainly that's become a more important consideration, moving forward in terms of the role of IT, playing there, not only as part of the due diligence process, but obviously as you just described there, after the acquisition is made, in terms of how to, bring that, together effectively. A couple of years ago, I wrote that the 3PL industry is kind of becoming barbell shaped, with, kind of small, niche providers growing and thriving at one end, and then, very large global providers kind of growing and thriving at the other end, and everybody else kind of in the middle, kind of getting squeezed out. I mean, did you agree with kind of my perspective there? And, in other words, are the rules for success in the 3PL industry, changing? And is that what's fueling some of this M&A activity as well?
I think it's a great question. And so obviously the consolidation has in the M&A industry has built significantly large companies that didn't exist 5 and 10 years ago. That's real. I'm constantly amazed at industry events, the amount of new names that I haven't seen before. So I haven't seen a significant barrier to entry in the marketplace, especially if you have innovation or a new idea. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially in the technology space recently. So I think that you're going to continue to see that. The thing that I think will ultimately make a difference is I believe the marketplace is going to demand the innovation with the scale and the network that we spoke about earlier for ultimate delivery. And so I expect more companies to come into the space. I expect acquisition to continue. I wouldn't say squeeze in the middle market. I don't think that market feels squeezed. I think what's happening is that it's if they're being squeezed, it's not by the market itself. It's by their inability to take the next step as their shippers or ultimately their customers are putting the market pressure forces on them that I described at the beginning of this conversation. And that is, I need more visibility, I need greater technology, I need network leverage, et cetera. And they can't turn that corner, which has them looking for a partner.
Right. No, I agree with that. I mean, I think, by squeezed, I kind of meant in some ways, getting commoditized, right? Or failure to, or feeling pressure to how to differentiate in a more crowded, field. And I think you're right. A lot of the companies that I come across that are kind of in that middle space, they get to a certain level, a certain size of company, but then to get them to that next level, they're really going to need an infusion of capital, an infusion of talent, an infusion of technology. And a lot of times that's where, it becomes difficult or challenging them to get to that next level. And why, I think, sometimes it's easier, or they start thinking about it, do we raise the money, right? Or to do that, or does it make sense for us to join a larger organization and get acquired?
I would say that yes, those I've seen all of that, right? And so, but what we talked about the reduced barrier to entry. We also, you and I both know that we have hit the bottom and have bounced as it relates to deflationary rate pressure in the marketplace over the last 18 to 24 months. And so startups that are promising rate savings will be we believe that they'll be failing on those promises in 2018, and your ability to deliver value not based on rate will be differentiating.
Right. So let's talk now about the customers at the end of the day, right? I mean, what does all this consolidation within the industry mean for customers? I mean, what are the potential benefits on one hand, and also kind of the potential risks for them?
We see this every day for our own acquisitions, and what the acquired customers tell us is pretty straightforward, and there's a recurring theme all the way through. And some of my prior answers have actually been as a result of those conversations, in that they recognize that their partners were beginning to hit a wall as it relates to their own ability to invest in technology. They also believe that they read the papers and they see what's going on in the marketplace, and they're beginning to believe the whole value of scale and network, as discussed earlier. The other side of that, though, is they're used to a very boutique experience, right? And so they like dealing with a smaller company, and the attention a smaller company gives them. And that's why we're quite careful, as I mentioned earlier, when we do an acquisition, we're looking more for revenue synergy than cost synergy, in that we want the day-to-day and the experience of the customer ultimately to be the same, but to bring the value of world-class technology, North American scale, Lean Six Sigma, and re-engineering and procurement processes that they don't currently have availability to ultimately drive the ongoing continuous improvement. And so really, I mean, as usual, the market wants the best of everything, right? And so they want to feel that direct customer experience, not feel like they're a small fish in a very large ocean, but they also want the benefit of living in that large ocean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I hear the same type of things too. I mean, I think overall, customers of the acquired companies ultimately feel optimistic, right? Because they see the opportunities ahead of them. I think where they have the concern is related to the kind of things that we talked about before. Is there truly a cultural fit? Is there going to be, distractions to what we're trying to accomplish and what we're looking for in the services we're looking for, the type of value we're looking for? Because the two entities are going to spend the next year, trying to merge their cultures and be kind of distracted by that. Or are there going to be issues on the technology front where, there's going to be disruptions, or we're not going to be able to do the things that we used to be able to do, or get the visibility we used to be able to have? So I think that there's always optimism, and I think they view it positive, but in the back of their mind, they're kind of, keeping their fingers crossed that everything we talked about before in terms of that due diligence and that, focus to alignment of culture, being more revenue driven alignment versus cost reduction. Those are the types of, positive framework that the combined entity is going to be moving forward with, versus one that's going to be, slash and run, or, where the cultures are just going to be clashing, and the customers at the end of the day are going to be, left out in the cold.
We both know that there has been many instances in the marketplace, ones that we could speak to very overtly, that have occurred that way, and it hasn't been beneficial to either company nor their customer base. And so, again, we've been quite blessed, and we're quite careful as we make those decisions. Ultimately, you can never look at the customer in the eye and say this is going to be seamless, because we will be engaging with them at some point through that first year on an IT cutover. And so we'll have to engage our IT team. But our promise then is to kind of live to the values that they've always felt in their current relationship and the service levels that they've always felt. In addition to that, layering in the world-class technology and the continuous improvement processes that we generally bring in our space.
Great, great. Well, Franco, we're kind of running short on time here. So just as a way to wrap up, I mean, do you see M&A activity kind of, continuing or picking up speed in the months ahead? And any big surprises? I mean, I know one of the predictions I made many years ago, which really hasn't come to fruition yet, was that a big name brand 3PL was going to buy a big name brand supply chain software company. Is that a possibility someday?
I think it is a possibility. It's certainly a possibility. I could see too strategic. I could, you could think about the impact of polls in one area of the logistics sector versus the IT area of the logistics sector, and the dilution involved, and how that might not work. The other side of that, I think there could be fit there for sure. And so if it does happen, I'll remember that you said it 3 or 4 years ago, and give you full credit for the idea. We will continue to acquire companies. It is part of our growth strategy. We have a strong organic growth strategy that we will continue to deliver on over the next 5 years, but we will certainly supplement that with ongoing acquisitions. As it relates to velocity, I really can't speak to that. I don't see anything on the horizon to suggest that would shut off. It might slow. If it does slow down, I would, again, I might think about the impact of capital markets and interest rates, et cetera, as a result of that.
Great. Well, I think we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears open and see what happens in the months and years ahead. But I think you're right. I think this is an area that we'll continue to see activity moving forward. Well, Frank, like I always say, we always manage to scratch the surface on these topics that we talk about here on Talking Logistics. But I think we covered a lot of ground today, and certainly appreciate you making the time to share your perspective on this topic.
A pleasure, Adrian.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you are watching this episode on demand, and either on the Transplace website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or comment for Frank, you can post it there, and I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you all, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.